Hi.
Greetings, all.
We're in the Pure Worship book on page 175. The subheading is How Was the Vision Fulfilled in Ezekiel's Day? I'll read the first paragraph here. Read 2 Chronicles 36:17 to 20, which we'll do afterwards. Ezekiel's prophecy was fulfilled in 607 BCE. When the Babylonian army destroyed Jerusalem and its temple. Like a cup in the hand of Jehovah, the Babylonians were the instruments Jehovah used to pour out punishment on unfaithful Jerusalem. Was the destruction indiscriminate? No. Ezekiel's vision had foretold that some would not be wiped out by the Babylonians.
A number of faithful individuals survived, including the Rechabites, Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, Jeremiah the prophet, and Baruch, his secretary. From Ezekiel's vision, we may conclude that such ones must have been sighing and groaning over all the detestable things being done in Jerusalem. Before the destruction, they undoubtedly showed their heartfelt rejection of wickedness and their devotion to pure worship, and they thus put themselves in line to be spared. So again, we're going back to what we said last time, that they're selling their interpretation of the narrative, which is that the deserving ones, the faithful ones, were preserved. And now they give us some examples. Don't dispute the examples, but they're missing a whole bunch of stuff, which we'll get to in a minute when we go to Chronicles and Kings. Here's the last paragraph in this subsection, though. Were those faithful ones literally marked for survival? There's no record that anyone, either Ezekiel or any other prophet, went through Jerusalem and put an actual mark on the foreheads of faithful ones. Evidently, then, Ezekiel's prophetic vision reveals what was happening in the heavenly realm, and what was therefore invisible to human eyes. The man with the secretary's inkhorn and the 6 men with the weapons for smashing were visionary representations of Jehovah's faithful spirit creatures who are always ready to carry out his will. Jehovah no doubt used his angels to direct the execution of judgment on unfaithful Jerusalem. As if putting a mark on the foreheads of those who were to be spared, the angels made sure that the judgment would be selective, not an indiscriminate slaughter.
Yeah, always watch out for no doubt and evidently.
Yeah, we got another no doubt about what the angels are. But the evidence is exactly the opposite. It looks like, according to your logic, the angels really messed up because a lot of people who were spared were not deserving ones. And of course, you're making it all about either you're deserving or you're not. And if you're deserving of being spared, that is, you will be spared, and all the others will be punished, whether it be by death immediately in Jerusalem at the hand of Nebuchadnezzar and his armies, or by exile in Babylon or somewhere else.
Yeah, so I think when you read through the Old Testament, when it talks about the exiles are punishment for unfaithfulness. They're not a reward.
Surviving.
Just surviving, living. Yeah. No, they're described as part of what God was doing to discipline his people. He sent them into all over the world, scattered them, exiled them.
Which brings us to why would they say read 2 Chronicles 36:17 to 20? And I think the answer to that is in the very first sentence after they tell you to read it, which is Ezekiel's prophecy was fulfilled in 607 BCE.
They just state it like it's a fact.
So why would they need 2 Chronicles 36 to buttress that idea? So why don't we read those 4 verses in Chronicles?
Okay.
And then contrast them with what Kings tells us with a lot more detail.
So he brought against them the king of the Chaldeans, who killed their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary. He felt no compassion for young man or virgin, old or infirm. God gave everything into his hand. All the utensils of the house of the true God, great and small, as well as the treasures of the house of Jehovah and the treasures of the king and his princes, everything he brought to Babylon. He burned down the house of the true God, tore down the wall of Jerusalem, burned all its fortified towers with fire, and destroyed everything of value. He carried off captive to Babylon those who escaped the sword, and they became servants to him and his sons until the kingdom of Persia began to reign.
Now, for some reason, they leave off verse 21 here. I'm not sure why they do that, but it used to be part of their basic argument to buttress the 70-year desolation idea. And it reads in the ESV, after talking about the length of servitude, etc., to fulfill the word of the Lord, Yahweh, by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. All the days that it lay desolate, it kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. Now, I'm not sure why they're leaving it off. Are they setting up for a change of doctrine here? Because they need the 70 years to be between the destruction of Jerusalem and the restoration of the people because of their doctrine of 1914.
Yeah.
It has to be 607. It can't be 586. And here we have to throw in something that you probably don't know about unless you've read Carl F. Johnson's book, which we'll put a link to, our discussion of that book at the end, which is that there's 3 overlapping 70-year periods. You want the witnesses only to think about one of those.
Yeah.
And why is it from the destruction of Jerusalem, which you think is 607, to the restoration of the people in 537? You want to make that the land was completely desolate for 70 years. Is that the impression you had?
That was definitely the impression I had as a witness. I didn't know about 3 different exiles and this overlapping periods of time of serving Babylon. No, I never had heard that. I only had heard that the land itself had to be completely empty for 70 years. Nobody there.
That's right.
That was the impression I was given.
Now, is that true? Have you found out since whether that's true or not?
Yeah, it's not true.
It's not true, but you need it to be true. You need to say it's true, and you're doing that again here by inferring that everybody that deserved to be punished was either killed, in these verses you would certainly derive that thought, or they were sent into exile in Babylon. Well, that fulfills your interpretation. That justifies your interpretation of the mark. The mark is only for the people who will survive.
So I think more people were like me in that, you didn't know who was where. Like, I was very fuzzy on my history and on my locations. Still not fabulous about that, but I now realize that I was being just given a narrative and I just went with it.
Well, that suggests the reason why they don't want you to read now or think about verse 21, which is the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah. Well, if you read the passages in Jeremiah, you will conclude with Carl F. Johnson that there are 3 periods of 70 years. And they are, according to Jeremiah 25, the dynasty, that is the dynasty, the Neo-Babylonian dynasty that Nebuchadnezzar is the most important figure in. The second is the time that they're in Babylon, and then you read Daniel 1 and you read Jeremiah 29 and Ezekiel, and you see that they're in Babylon from the days of Jeconiah, not the destruction of Jerusalem. So 11 years before. So Daniel's in from about 18 years before, 605. Jeconiah and Ezekiel and most of the people in Babylon are there from 11 years before the destruction of Jerusalem, 597 or so. And then there's a third exile, which is the group that are mentioned here in Chronicles. But why do we need 2 Kings? Because it fills in a bunch of details that make the whole picture different, and not only show that there's a lot of doubt even about the 70-year period, but also about whether the land was ever completely desolate. So look at 2 Kings chapter 25. I think we'll just read the 3 verses. That's all that's really necessary. You got a ton of detail here and a lot of names, which we will not clutter our discussion with. But the 3 verses that are really important here for, is there anybody in the land now after the destruction of Jerusalem? And what, verses 12, was it 22 and 24?
Yeah. So 12 says, but the chief of the guard left some of the poorest people of the land to serve as vine dressers and as compulsory laborers. So somebody's left.
And then so many are left, though. It's not just a
Yeah.
few.
Yeah.
It's who is left, and they have to be governed. So you have more details about that.
So that 22 gives you that detail. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon appointed Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, over the people, whom he had left behind in the land of Judah. And 24, Gedaliah swore an oath to them and their men, and said to them, "Do not be afraid of being servants to the Chaldeans. Live in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it will go well with you."
So we have no indication, first, that there was ever a complete desolation of the land. Quite the opposite here and elsewhere. So why do you need this fiction? Well, you need it to prove that, well, the land had to be completely desolate, and that only happened after Zedekiah was taken off the throne and the temple was destroyed and the city was burned. Yeah. You need that to be so, to get the date 607 as the only starting point for the Gentile time.
Yeah, and so that you can have your 1914 teaching.
So the whole structure of the Watchtower's interpretive system is based on this lie. The lie that's in the very first sentence in paragraph 9. Ezekiel's prophecy was fulfilled in 607. Notice the assertion. It's not qualified by we think or some minority of scholars say, because there's nobody who agrees with you on this date 607.
The middle paragraph 10 that we read, where they're describing who they count as faithful ones who survive, and then they do a lot of just their own imagination, telling you what people are thinking, how they're feeling, what their emotions are. So they got, from Ezekiel's vision, we may conclude that such ones must have been sighing and groaning over the detestable things being done in Jerusalem. Before the destruction, they undoubtedly showed their heartfelt rejection of wickedness and their devotion to pure worship, and they thus put themselves in line to be spared. But we don't have to imagine the thinking of the people. You've got a whole book written by Jeremiah as to how he feels about it. And he's not just sighing and groaning over the detestable things. He's grieving the people. Yeah. He loves the people.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's thinking, well, they don't deserve to be spared, I do. That's not his attitude. He's got a heart for the people. And he knows what's coming is punishment for them. For a lot of them, either death or exile.
As we said last time, though, you're forgetting one thing: the what is punishment for most of these people, most of whom are already in exile before the destruction of Jerusalem. It's also punishment for Ezekiel, for Daniel, and for Jeremiah, who die in exile.
Yeah, yeah.
So
they're, as
it
a
is.
people, they're being
you keep using
punished.
the word indiscriminate or discriminate here. That's your main emphasis: is that the angels were given the charge to discriminate between the righteous and the unrighteous. That's not the thought of the prophets. The prophets, even in Babylon, are, Psalm 137 most famously, we said last time, how can we sing the song of Yahweh in a foreign land? And I don't doubt that Ezekiel, Daniel, and Jeremiah thought that way. Jeremiah has to leave the land too. He goes to Egypt.
Yeah.
So they're all thinking, how can we praise God? So that leads us to Daniel again, doesn't it? Chapter 9, where he's saying the 70 years is nearly over. Which 70 years, though? Going back to Carlo F. Johnson for a sec. Johnson shows that the third 70-year period, so we got two now already, which is the dynasty itself is about 70 years long. None of these are absolutely synchronized or absolutely precise as to the dating. About 70 years, the dynasty of Babylon, Jeremiah 25. The exile itself, about 70 years, because most of the Jews come back gradually. So when does it start? It starts with Daniel, really, which is 7 or so years before Ezekiel's exile, Jeconiah's exile. And that's 18 or so years before the destruction of Jerusalem. The third 70-year period, then, more or less, and this one is actually the closest to the precise dating, from the destruction itself, 586, the destruction of the temple, that is, to the restoration of the temple, 516, 515. That one the Watchtower completely ignores. So if you want more info on that, look up Carl Olaf Johnson's book, which is free online, an expanded version.
So we'll put a link to a video you did based on Johnson.
Johnson's book, yeah.
And also the first of a series done by our friend Austin McMahon, who did a very much more detailed.
Yeah, look up Austin
analysis.
McMahon's videos, McMahon. Did I get it right? I think so. McMahon. Look up his videos, especially the first few that are about the date and the Babylonian exile.
Yeah. Okay.
See you next time.